Good evening, welcome back to Stop the Badges Weekly Nightly News. I'm Porter Vaughn, and we're doing a overview of our presidential campaigns. Moving on to our second candidate, pretty high up in the pollings right now, is Ben Carson, and an intelligent neurosurgeon, and actually a fine example of what I was talking about earlier, as it turns out. Someone who knows his career and his industry extremely well, but is a candidate for our presidency and being involved in politics was what I feel the largest letdown. Several of his policies are kind of overviews that you would expect to hear from a fifth grader or a child. Kind of just they're morally sound. They're stationed in the white. There's no gray, and there's no detail. There's no actual plan. His best two ideas, I would say, were education and healthcare. Basically, as far as education goes, he feels, he's against Common Core. He opposes Common Core, the principles of the federal government trying to take over public schools and dictate the curriculum, effectively lowering the standards to leave no more children behind. And even there, he doesn't really present a plan. He just says oppose any attempt from faceless bureaucracy to overtake our education system, and it should just be parents and the local involved community that help the kids out. And I agree with that. So that's a pretty good standard and a pretty good stand on that position. Moving on to healthcare, he opposes Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, whatever you want to refer to it as, and he wants to repeal it. He wants to abolish it, and kind of return the relationship to physicians and individual patients. He doesn't, again, outline a plan for that. His campaign page is very simple, but rather just states that that's what he wants to happen, that we'll do away with Obamacare. And I mean, I agree, though, revoking Obamacare will be a great first step, because for one, the businesses that, major corporations that actually are offering good health care right now to their employees at a fair rate, they're not going to be able to renege on that as easily as the individuals will now be able to give up the cheap and affordable, but terrible shit, high deductible, low copay policies that they've been forced, to pay into or suffer the inevitable fine. And I myself still haven't paid into that system. I refuse Obamacare. It's unconstitutional, and you cannot monopolize and then force upon an industry upon your citizens. And this is one point I agree with Ben Carson on. He said it is the worst thing to happen to this country since slavery. Now, some people have been criticizing him because saying that's dramatic or drastic, it's too far, that's too extreme. And I don't think it is, because it's a direct tax on the people. And just like the Federal Reserve Act of 1913 was seen as, it's a form of enslavement, because you got to work your entire life, you got to pay into that system. You're trackable now, you're on the grid, you're logged to that social security number you're issued, and you think it's your benefits, you think you're paying into it, but in reality you're just pulling from a deficit budget later on in the future. When you do start pulling benefits, you're not actually paying into a savings system of any kind. So it is a big gag, and it is a big form of enslavement, which, as we can see now, papers, passports, IDs to do anything, social security numbers to do anything, e-verify for employment, it's locking in on itself. So he's not entirely wrong. It's not a drastic statement. It's a bold statement. It's one that maybe not everyone's ready to hear, but it's a good statement. But aside from those 2 points, education and healthcare, I feel that overall he's playing the role that we want to hear right now. 10 years ago it was Republic or Democrat. We wanted to hear which party you were with. We wanted to hear if you were conservative or if you were liberal. But now we want to hear about new opportunities. We want to hear about getting ourselves back. We want to hear about individual freedoms being returned, the Patriot Act being gone, transparency in government coming back, the same type of things that Obama sold us on. Change, real progress in the relationship between us as citizens and our government. That was something Obama sold us on. And here we are again. He's kind of carrying the same campaign. His page is very simple. It's stated, for the layman. There's no idea behind it. There's no plan of action behind it. It's just, man, it would be nice. For example, he's talking about gun control. He says he won't support any kind of gun control. And then he has a 1-paragraph thing saying our founding fathers, they gave us the right for gun control. They knew we could need it, and that's our right, and I won't support any kind of gun restrictions on the Second Amendment. I won't support any Second Amendment restrictions. But at the top of that, his header is, the Second Amendment rights for law-abiding citizens. And that's the key argument with gun confiscation, registration, and control, is law-abiding. And then you can get into all kinds of subcategories. Once you start breaking stuff down, it just goes on forever. You get into a point where you say, okay, well, if federally a controlled substance such as marijuana is classified as illegal, but states are passing local laws where they allow medicine, it to be used, given certain circumstances, or even recreationally in Colorado, then they're using that if you're using this medicine, then you can't have a gun. They're confiscating gun rights. You won't be able to get a gun. Which doesn't make any sense, because you can be on any other kind of medication almost and have a gun, as long as you're not schizophrenic. I understand that. But I mean, if you can't sleep right, or you can't focus and you're on Adderall, you can still get a gun. There's no kind of restriction for that. So why all of a sudden, so when you put law-abiding on, that's my point, is you can start picking off groups and segregating people and slowly registering and confiscating. Because if you got to make sure that it's only law-abiding citizens that have guns, the first thing you have to do is you have to register the trade and sale of all guns, which means gun shows. And we shouldn't believe into the myth that, a gun sold illegally will be used illegally. Guns are used illegally most often in zones of disarmament. When banks are robbed because you can't take a gun in the bank. When stores are robbed and most stores don't want a gun in there. If we had a society where we could carry and bear our arms as individuals without unreasonable hasslement from the authorities, because even people who can carry a gun sometimes won't, it's not worth the hassle. We ourselves would deter a lot of that violence against us with gun crimes. You don't want to go on a shooting rampage in a place where everybody has a gun. You want to go, obviously, as we always see, in a place where no one has a gun. So the more we create disarmament zones, the more we put restrictions on gun sale trade, the more we create the system where you have to register, you have to identify yourself, you have to be on the grid just to protect yourself with a firearm, is ridiculous. And that's the first step in leading to gun confiscation, is quote-unquote law-abiding citizen requirements. Moving on, he wants to keep Gitmo open, Guantanamo Bay, our illegal overseas prison that we have housed in Cuba. And here's the thing about that. Again, a one-paragraph comment that you would expect from like a 10-year-old saying, this is where we take the bad guys. As he says, this is where we detain dangerous terrorists who we cannot, we have to house them safely and we can't let them out in the public until we can take them to trial. As Obama has said time and time again, these are prisoners who we've had in here, some for more than 10 years, tortured, abused, sometimes raped and sodomized. It happens. On a daily basis, just treated like the scum of human earth because the soldiers that are guarding them think, they're terrorists. Just like apparently Ben Carson does. But we've been told we don't have the evidence to try these people as terrorists. If they are your enemy and you're going to make a decision that it is an immediate threat to American lives to take these people out, then take them out. You can't house and hold them at the expense of taxpayers. That's the other argument. For 10 years while you accumulate evidence by torturing them and hoping that you can put together a case, but then later say that the evidence is tainted because you tortured them. You had no chain of custody. You didn't do any proper investigation. You went totally black ops on this. Man, that's what happens. And that's why we had the food strike for more than 100 days down at Guantanamo Bay in 2013. The prisoners weren't eating, and we started force-feeding them. Nasty, painful. I mean, they'd rather deteriorate and die if the world didn't get them out. Because Obama said that he was going to get them out. That was a change he promised. And here we are, Ben Carson saying, they're terrorists, we got to keep them there. If these guys are terrorists, I don't see how they posed an immediate threat to American lives from all the way over in the Middle East. If we can't even prove, if we weren't watching them and we heard the plans, we had the intel, we can't try them in a court, in a public court, not some private military hole. But that's his stance on Guantanamo Bay. Keep it open so that we can lock up the terrorists and throw away the key forever. Alright, another one of his policies is, or his stances on, a certain issue we have right now is our budget. He wants a ratified constitution with an amendment to a balanced budget amendment. And again, a paragraph long, and he says it 3 times. Balanced budget. I want a balanced budget amendment. Congress says they won't get serious about balancing the budget until we get a balanced budget amendment in the Constitution. I call for a balanced budget. All you do when you say that is you throw 435 members of Congress together in 2 rooms and you say, I want a balanced budget. And they say, we all still want our stuff. We're just going to have to keep borrowing money for forever because we're not going to give up anything. And, of course, these are the other 2 main issues. Both the Middle East, fighting ISIS, and fighting Russia through Ukraine, and fighting ISIS so that they can't destabilize the Middle East via Russia, is 2 very expensive wars Ben Carson wants to take us into. Either supporting Ukraine or invading Iraq. Either way, it doesn't matter. It's billions of dollars that we will spend and blow. Thousands of troops we will deploy and lose. And more enemies we will create, as we did in Iraq the first time around. We will create more of a threat for ourselves than we will accomplish anything by trying to occupy, take over, create peace zones in these 2 different countries. But to pull back, to not have those wars, to go even further, we'd have to withdraw from several countries, downsize our military, to look towards a balanced budget. And that would only be after we paid off debt for several years and lived off a smaller deficit and smaller until we were equal. We would almost eliminate our overseas military. We'd stop occupying Germany, Japan. We'd bring everyone home because we're not worried about Germany taking over anymore. We can stop fucking with Iran and Iraq and Russia. And we can promote free trade, but without making it so that citizens and slave trade can just happen under the radar. All kosher. And then we could, in the future, look at a budget where we supported ourselves. Again, if we got off foreign oil, if we got off our oil, if we got off oil. When I grew up, we had dreams of moving towards solar power, wind power, water energy. Solar farms are easy. So are wind farms. They have them everywhere in Germany. Huge wind towers. I forget what they're called, but they generate power from the wind. We have so much sun out here in the desert southwest. I mean, but we don't move towards it at all. We move towards nuclear power, something far more dangerous, where the chemicals last at least 4 decades, like Chernobyl. Nobody can still live there. The second greatest nuclear disaster was Fukushima. And, I mean, of course, we'll all hear on TV that it's all mysterious and completely unrelated to anything we can think of, but right after Fukushima and this radiation cloud moves across the ocean, starfish just melt and polar bears all die and the seals are just washing up and everything in the ocean is dying and the plankton is down and radiation at the shores of San Diego is 1,300% what it normally is, and we have no idea why. It couldn't be Fukushima. It couldn't be the second worst nuclear disaster in the world that they continuously covered up and lied about how bad it was as it continued to leak out. Japan and America didn't want the world to freak out. We were over there with our sailors covering it up and then screwing over the sailors that got cancer. 50 sailors on an aircraft carrier had their asses melting and their body parts falling apart because they were just parked right off the coast as it all leaked into the ocean. But my point being, if we stop needing our military to police the world and run the world and intimidate the world, and the oil to keep us involved in the world, and we actually worked on growing our country and our technology, and we provided something, some kind of contribution. We don't make most of our own food. We don't make most of our own stuff. A lot of our stuff is in trade for dollars and oil. We put our military in head first and occupy wherever we want at any point in time. We strangle ourselves into the world to justify our existence so we can stay on top, and that will only work for so long, especially in our deficit budget, ever increasing deficit. But there's no balanced budget possible at that time, especially when you don't have a plan and you just say it 3 times in a paragraph. Which also takes me, again, you can't do the war with Russia, can't do the war in Iraq if you want to have a balanced budget. And that pretty much finally covers Ben Carson. And that, like I said, his education and healthcare were at least a start. That would be something. But the balanced budget goes nowhere. Law-abiding citizens leads to registration. Everything else is just something you would expect to hear in a storybook, something you would want to hope for change. That's why you want to like this guy, because he's saying, I'll change things. And he gives you a simple paragraph, and you think, man, it's a simple paragraph. I read that in like 2 minutes. And I still have a smile on my face. And if I can have a smile on my face at the end of a paragraph, why can't I vote for this guy? He made me smile. That's not what he should do. I should be terrified talking to my commander-in-chief because the shit he has to deal with. He's like, do you know what I'm going to have to do to the budget? Nobody's getting paid for 3 years. The IRS is gone. That's only 1/3 of our income anyways, but we spend so much on our military and all these foo-foo programs. I'm eliminating them all, cutting the military down, and farm subsidies, fuck it, they're gone. We'll grow our own shit. We're not bringing in avocados and bananas from Peru anymore. We're gonna grow what we can grow, and we're gonna live off potato and wheat and fucking tomatoes for the next 10 years, so we can get ourselves back on track. And everybody will be terrified and think, oh, third world country, this is going to be terrible. But at least we'll be getting somewhere. We'll be a first world country that's actually a first world country someday. Because life here, we are all asleep. We don't live like other countries in the first world country. Not really. The 99% of us, so we say. Anyways, that's Ben Carson. Thank you for watching this update on Stop the Badges Weekly Nightly News. Stay tuned as we still got 15 more candidates to get through.